The day Sandra Bullock stood on the Oscar stage and thanked her husband for making her feel truly loved for the first time, she had no idea that speech was already a lie. Not hers. His. And what would happen just 10 days later would rewrite everything she thought she knew about her own life. To understand how this marriage fell apart, you have to go back to how it started. Because the beginning tells you almost everything about the ending. It was 2003. Bullock's 10-year-old godson was obsessed with a Discovery Channel show called Monster Garage. He wanted to meet the host, a tattooed, motorcycle-building reality TV personality named Jesse James. Bullock arranged the visit as a Christmas present, taking the boy to tour James's custom motorcycle shop in Long Beach. Nobody walked into that garage expecting a love story. On paper, these two made absolutely no sense together. America's sweetheart and a guy who built motorcycles that sold for $300,000. But something clicked. James proposed with a vintage Tiffany diamond ring from 1910. Not flashy, not new, but something with history. Bullock loved that about it. And on July 16, 2005, they married at a ranch near Santa Barbara. Guests sat on haystacks.
No bridesmaids, no groomsmen.
They walked down the aisle to a recording of Bullock's late mother, an opera singer, performing a single aria. It was intimate. It was intentional. It looked built to last. But here's what was actually happening underneath that surface. Bullock didn't just marry James, she married his entire world. He had 3 children from 2 previous marriages, and she stepped into that role without hesitation. At a press conference in 2007, she said plainly, "I have children. I'm married into children. My love for those kids as a co-parent is no less than if I had that child biologically." That wasn't a talking point. She meant it. In 2009, James was granted temporary guardianship of his 5-year-old daughter Sunny after her mother was sent to federal prison. When the mother was released and sought custody back, Bullock and James fought together in court, and won. One of the highest-paid actresses in the world spent months fighting to keep a child who wasn't biologically hers. They won that battle side by side. It looked, to everyone watching, like proof this family could survive anything. It couldn't. And what happened next, nobody saw coming, not in the way it actually arrived. In March 2010, Sandra Bullock won the Academy Award for Best Actress for The Blind Side. On stage, in front of millions, she looked out at her husband and said, "There is no surprise that my work got better when I met you, because I never knew what it felt like for someone to have my back." It was one of the most vulnerable things she'd ever said in public. Specific. Personal. Real. 10 days later, it became almost unbearable to watch back. Tattoo artist Michelle McGee went public with an affair she claimed to have had with James, during the exact period Bullock was away filming The Blind Side. The very movie. The very award. While she was building the performance of her career, the marriage she had just credited for making it possible was already coming apart. Then 2 more women came forward. Then the full scale of it started to surface. And what came next was worse than anyone initially realized. This wasn't one mistake. Multiple women came forward with allegations, and at least one claimed the relationship had gone on for years. Not a moment of weakness, but a pattern. James later confirmed the cheating publicly and without softening it. He said he had thrown away an amazing life and marriage by his own hands, and that he'd become, in his words, the most hated man in the world.
No spin. No complicated framing.
Just the weight of it, taken fully. But then he said something else, something strange, and honestly, worth sitting with. He said he never fully believed Bullock loved him. That throughout the marriage, he was waiting for the rug to be yanked out from under him. That he was always bracing for it to end. Think about that for a moment. While Bullock was publicly saying this man made her feel loved for the first time in her life, he was privately convinced the whole thing could collapse at any moment. 2 people in the same marriage, living in completely opposite emotional realities. That's not just sad. That's the kind of mismatch that quietly poisons everything around it. So why couldn't this marriage survive what happened? Plenty of couples work through infidelity. It happens, and it doesn't automatically end things. But this was different, and the reasons stack up in a way that's hard to argue with. First, the scale. This wasn't one affair. It was multiple women, over an extended period of time. That's not a lapse. That's a choice, repeated. And patterns are categorically harder to come back from than isolated mistakes because they say something structural about who someone is, not just what they did once. Second, the timing. The betrayal became public 10 days after the highest professional moment of Bullock's life. Those two things, the Oscar and the scandal, happened in the same narrow window, permanently tangled together. Every time she looks at that award, some part of that memory is linked to what was happening at home while she was on set. You can't surgically separate those things afterward. They are fused. Third, the emotional gap James himself admitted to. One partner feeling fully secure, the other convinced it's all temporary. That's not a small difference. That's two people living in different relationships entirely. And fourth, perhaps the most devastating detail of all, Bullock was in the middle of a secret adoption when all of this became public. Their son, Louis. The most hopeful, vulnerable moment of their relationship as a family was unfolding at the exact same time as the collapse. That intersection of betrayal and new life is almost impossible to fully absorb. Bullock filed for divorce in April 2010. She offered no public statement beyond citing the standard legal language. No tell-all. No press tour of grievances. She paused her public obligations, said almost nothing, and quietly moved forward. What she didn't stop was the adoption. Louis became her son. Despite everything, the family she had chosen, the children, the commitment, the daily presence, that she kept. She separated the failure of the marriage from the parts of her life she had decided were worth carrying forward. That's a hard distinction to make in the middle of a public scandal. She made it anyway. Looking at the full picture now, all these years later, the reason this marriage couldn't survive isn't complicated. It wasn't a lack of love at the start, and it wasn't a lack of effort during the relationship. The custody battle they fought together proves that much. It was a betrayal severe enough, repeated enough, and timed badly enough that no amount of commitment on Bullock's side could repair what had already been broken from the other. She walked away from the marriage. She never walked away from the family she'd built inside it. And that distinction, more than anything else, is probably the most accurate thing you can say about who Sandra Bullock actually is. Despite everything, the family she had chosen, the children, the commitment, the daily presence, that she kept. She separated the failure of the marriage from the parts of her life she had decided were worth carrying forward. That's a hard distinction to make in the middle of a public scandal. She made it anyway. Looking at the full picture now, all these years later, the reason this marriage couldn't survive isn't complicated. It wasn't a lack of love at the start, and it wasn't a lack of effort during the relationship. The custody battle they fought together proves that much. It was a betrayal severe enough, repeated enough, and timed badly enough that no amount of commitment on Bullock's side could repair what had already been broken from the other. She walked away from the marriage. She never walked away from the family she'd built inside it. And that distinction, more than anything else, is probably the most accurate thing you can say about who Sandra Bullock actually is.